Okay, Itamakskanaatoni, good morning. It is a gray Wednesday, March 28th, 2018, and by the feel of the air, I would say it's a possibility we're going to get some freezing rain. Temperatures are hovering right around zero. I'm down here at Spopikimi, doing my usual morning walk. We're well into the first part of the lunar cycle, Sa'aki-sum, the duck moon, and a lot of the phenological events, the ecological events that I would expect are unfolding. Haven't seen them arrive here yet, but American widgeons and pintails have come in just a little bit to the south of us in Cardston. Last 2 days were very windy. In fact, this video is kind of a redo because I made a take on it yesterday morning when I was out here, but I think the winds were just so brutal. But there were things happening. The owl was back here in the forest main, surprisingly enough. And as I came past it, it flew to the north wood, where it seems there are some crows kind of setting up camp in the north wood. They've got a nest in one of the trees that they're building, and there's at least 3, so the parents and one of the older siblings are together there. And they, as soon as the owl showed up, they started mobbing it along with the magpies, and so the owl was pretty uncomfortable, and I haven't seen her back around here in the forest yet today. Did see some paracommon merganser today in the South Pond Spring. Spring is getting much wider, and the river's opened up in large part. There's still an area kind of right under the high level bridge where the anchors are probably fusing the ice well enough to keep it there for a while. I know it's like that every year there. I think it's also a deep area. So yeah, but the river for the most part is opening up, and there's still some white-tailed deer here in the forest main. Saw some here this morning. Still a porcupine around. But waiting on new arrivals, and they're gonna be coming. Well, already we've seen the ring-billed gulls are back, and the killdeer are back, and there's gonna be others coming back in here. Yeah, so I'm just taking my walkabout. But the video that I really want to make, I should say, one thing that I haven't noted phenologically yet for this lunar cycle that's going on is up above, because I often don't, go up there looking for natural events other than the rattlesnakes and human encounters and things like that. But one of the things that's happening up there is the Richardson's ground squirrels have come out. They've been out for already 3-4 weeks. The adult males come out first, and then I think probably now the adult females are just starting to emerge. Adult males come out and they kind of battle it out, who's gonna basically be the concubine for whatever colony, because in the ground squirrel world, females rule. It's very matriarchal, and so the males first have to fight amongst each other to claim an area where there's a colony, and then after the females have used them and abused them, they abuse them more, and a lot of times will kick them out of there, my understanding, or at least push them to the very periphery. Female world, the ground squirrel world. We call them golfers up here, most people. Anyway, really why I'm making this video today is that I want to respond to a question that several of my YouTube subscribers have put to me, and that is a question of whether or not I would be willing to implant a a tracking device on Mandy prior to her release in May. Whether or not we can put something on her so that we can track her through the summer months, find out, you know, what happens with her, what her movements are like, and hopefully that she survives it. So, you know, here's my thoughts. My initial kind of instinct is just to veto the idea straight out, and there's reasons, you know, behind that. But I don't want to make a real rash decision. I am in fact still thinking it over, and seriously, I've put out some tendrils out there to see cost-wise what we'd be dealing with. You know, in order to tag a rattlesnake in a way that you can follow its movements, monitor its movements from a distance, you need something other than the typical like pit tags that I'm semi-equipped for already, because my predecessor, Red Ernst, had left me a little tackle box with some pit tagging equipment in there. But the pit tags, they really, you really need to encounter the snake again in order to identify it, because the pit tags, you basically have just this wand and it has to come close like a metal detector over the top of the tag, the surgically implanted tag, in order for you to read the tag and know if that's the snake that you're looking for and that kind of a thing. You know, previously here in Lethbridge, before I took the lead on this program, there was some pit tagging that went on, and some research done in relation to the man-made hibernacula, you know, in particular, and what happened to the snakes that were relocated there. But again, you only know if you encounter the snake again. You can't be like, I can't just be walking around with an antenna telling me where the snake is, right? It doesn't work like that, the pit tagging. So when I came on to lead the rattlesnake program, I realized very quickly that the pit tagging was not really necessary, because all I needed was my iPhone with me, and I could take a close-up photograph of every snake that I encountered, and just by the details, the little variations in the scale patterns and their colorations, I can identify individual snakes. And so I keep a photo database, and I'm able to do the same thing that people do with pit tagging, just with photographs, and it's completely non-intrusive for the snake. You know, there's no surgery required, which is what's required when you put a pit tag in. It's not a big deal, but you know, looking at the needles in my tackle box, it's not something that I'd want done to me. In any case, I've also tried to approach the program with a very kind of Blackfoot ethological ethics, or ecological ethics. And you know, for me, it's part of the motivation for doing the work in the first place, and making sure my life is arranged in a way that my summers are free enough to run the rattlesnake program, is because, you know, I'm trying to provide a service to the snakes in this case, and in other cases, you know, when I deal with raccoons and skunks and porcupines and whatever, I'm trying to provide a service for those animals, because in whatever manner, if I get called to the scene, it means that there are scared or uncomfortable humans who've encountered the animal, or that the animal is just straight out in danger in some other means, like maybe it's caught up in something, or it's on the road where it's very vulnerable. You know, if I get called in, it really is kind of to rescue the animals. I feel it's to bring them out of that situation, that dangerous situation, and away from the the humans that are not comfortable, because you know the reality is that throughout most of our history of engagement with these animals, and when I say our, I'm talking about the modern kind of globalizing Western culture, rather than the Blackfoot side, which I also carry around with me. But most of that history of engagement with these animals in North America in particular, from the newcomer settler side, has been just persecution and fear and outright, you know, killing them just for being around, right? So I have been trying to advocate a different thing, and what I do with the snake program itself is kind of an embodiment of that philosophy of trying to do things to improve our relationships with the animals, and you know, giving them some service. And I don't feel you know, generally, that taking a kind of a scientific ethics around these relationships and abusing my level of control by capturing an animal and forcing it to do my bidding, you know, when it's not necessarily of benefit to the animal, as is the case when a lot of times when animals are tagged, right, electronically in different ways, or you know, especially if they have to have surgical implants that are going to be there a long time. But I've seen all kinds of cases. I mean, there's a couple in Saskatchewan who tag owls on their wings with these great big, like, looks like cattle tags clipped on there, the kind of tags you see clipped on the ears of cattle. You know, these things are on the wings of owls and stuff. All that kind of, like, I agree that the knowledge that we can get in certain instances outweighs the, perhaps, see, I didn't even know if I want to go that far. But I can see the justification, knowledge-wise, in some respects. You know, if you have a study, if this study is going to lead to real protection of the species at new levels, as it has with tracking of rattlesnakes in the past, then you know, it's hard to say that we shouldn't leverage a little bit of that control to make the experiment happen. But you know, in most cases, I don't think that the degree of knowledge justifies the abuse of the animal that we do when we do mainstream style wildlife research. And I think it's lazy. I've argued this with a lot of researchers, actually, biologists and such, because I think, you know, you're forcing information out of the animal that you could get other ways if you had more patience. You know, like they put these kind of devices, collars and stuff, on bears and wild cats and this kind of thing, where they could feasibly track and follow those animals themselves, you know, rather than collaring them. And which is not, you know, the collar is not so bad, I don't think, but when it gets into the surgical side, and in order to tag Mandy in a way that we can follow her from a distance, we're going to need I think a VHS or VHF tag, and typically those come with these little kind of antennas that stick out, you know. I wouldn't want to have those antennas sticking out with Mandy, so we would order a tag that has a antenna kind of coiled. That's going to make it less readable, you know, at greater distances, but it'll still get the job done. But it would have to be a surgical implant, and she'll end up having that with her for the rest of her life. And what we're going to gain from it is probably not going to be of long-term benefit to Mandy, or even short-term benefit to her. You know, it may give us a little bit of knowledge about what happens when you relocate a rattlesnake. If I happen to, say for instance, use option number 2, site number 2 that I'm considering moving her to, the Cottonwood Park site, where I know her natal den is not, you know, tagging her might give us a little bit of information, but you know, when you really think about what it is that I'm being asked, the question really is, can we keep pursuing Mandy and follow her story through the summer? Because people are you know, they've become interested in Mandy and what's happening to her, and they're concerned about her, and you know, they want to know what's happening with her, and I do too. You know, the idea of just, okay, I'm going to release her come May, and then may or may not ever see her again, and who knows, you know, what'll happen to her. Yeah, of course that sucks, but that is the relationship that I think that we have. Like, I don't feel like I have any right to ask anything of her, even though I helped her. You know, I still don't feel like I have the right to say, okay, now you're gonna help me serve some kind of really selfish interests. You know, it's just for my mind, for me to know what happens with her and this kind of a thing, that I would pit tag her, or not pit tag her, but VHF-tag her. So it's really selfish. It's not going to help her, probably. It's not going to help other snakes, whatever knowledge is gleaned from it. The only way I could see it being helpful is if it was framed. And in fact, you know, when thinking about it, the experiment itself, like tagging Mandy at all, can't just be done. I have to actually get that included onto my permit for the year. I've already got my permit in place for the rattlesnake mitigations and relocations this year, but if I'm going to be tagging snakes, I have to have that, whatever the experiment is, run through Fish and Wildlife and have them in agreement that it's important and necessary. So that's another level of issue with the idea. Not that it couldn't be done, and the way that I see it could be done is just by making the Mandy case just one case study of several in a broader experiment about snakes who are relocated to places where probably their natal den is not, right? And we can learn something from that, and maybe it would help with the further development of our protocol on how to work with these snakes in the mitigation with suburbia, right? So could be couched like that, and there's a potential benefit to the snakes like that, but as it is, I think it's just kind of like it's really just our self-serving interests, and I'm not sure ethically whether I would go there. Right now, like I say, my instinct is just to veto it. It's not that I don't like the idea, not that I wouldn't want to know. I would love to know. I would love to be able to follow Mandy through the summer, but I don't ethically feel that I have the right to impose on her like that. You know, the little surgery that's going to be involved, and then her carrying this little thing around in her body the rest of her life, you know. So that's my initial thoughts on the idea. I'm glad it was suggested. I don't have any, like, you know, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad for suggesting it, because certainly I thought about it too. I've thought, you know, I could do something so that I could track her for the summer. So I'd love to do that. I don't know, I can't in my mind right now justify it, but I'm looking into it. Gonna see what the costs are, gonna see what people's responses to this are. I don't know, but right now I just, you know, I don't feel like that's the way to go, and it's not really the most of my concerns. I'm really more still trying to sort out for me where I'm gonna release Mandy at. I think it probably will be the Cottonwood site, but I'm not 100%. Probably won't be till the day that I go out there. You know, I won't be 100% what's going to happen. So anyway, that's my response to that question. Hope it leads to some thoughtful discussion. I'm a little bit of a romantic and stuff, you know. Like I don't even feel like I have justification to swat flies. So my approach to the wildlife is it's kind of like I have some guiding rules, like, you know, you don't kill it unless you're going to eat it, and the less harm the better, you know. And I would have to I really would have to feel like I have some good clear justification to impose on Mandy further like that, because, you know, I'm just happy that she made it through the winter. She made it through good. She's healthy, she's fat, you know, she's eating mice, she's shitting good, and everything's well with her, and she's going to go on her way, you know, and I think she's going to do good. I think she's going to be fine. And it's not impossible that we'll encounter her again, but I don't know if the circumstances of that encounter are best forced on her, you know. It'd be nice for her to be free again. Anyway, those are my thoughts. And yeah, until next time.